friends that keep chickens at your house, what do you get from them?
Oh,
Eggs? Yeah. Can you think of some other uses? Maybe you don't use your chickens for this.
The basket that we collect with eggs, it's shaped like a chicken!
That sounds really, really cute and fun. So I can think of another use for chickens, which is meat. Do you ever eat chicken or chicken nuggets, chicken breast for dinner sometimes, right? So that's something else that we can get from chickens. Sometimes with humans, how we kind of...
Did they stop laying eggs once?
These ones are pretty young, and so they lay eggs, but it's really dependent on their age. So the younger chickens lay more eggs. They lay them pretty much every day. Not so much in the winter, but all spring and all summer and most of the fall. But as the chickens get older, it takes so much work for their bodies to produce those eggs. So they lay eggs slightly less frequently, and then it kind of drops off, so they hardly lay any eggs at all. And in lots of situations, like in a farm that's raising chickens to sell those eggs, and they need to make a profit, they need to make money. After those chickens aren't really laying eggs anymore, they do kill the chickens, and then they get new young chickens who will lay eggs for them every day. So it's dependent on age. But every once in a while, even an older chicken will lay an egg. Yeah.
We have only one chicken. Some of our old chickens lay eggs sometimes, but then they stop. So we ate them.
Yeah, so that is another good use.
Look at that turtle.
Turtles are reptiles. And chickens are also descended, even though they're birds now, they're actually descended from dinosaurs, which are like giant reptiles. You knew that? And were domesticated about 10,000 years ago from wild jungle fowl in Southeast Asia. So yeah, I don't know what color chickens you guys have at your house, but these chickens are two different colors. Do you know why?
We have that type of chicken.
You have this kind of shiny, dark chicken, yeah?
No,
Well, so chickens can be all different colors, right? You've seen these chickens. You have chickens at your house that are a different color.
That was the white one just shake its head so hard that it hit the...
So these chickens are two different breeds of chickens. Do you know what a breed is? Well, just like dogs, how you can have a poodle or a Labrador, big dogs, little dogs, dogs that are different colors, curly-haired dogs. Just like dogs and cats, lots of animals, there are different breeds of chickens, so kind of different varieties. Do you know how chickens are born, though?
Yes.
How? The chicken lays something, and then the baby chick is born from that, right? Do you know?
Yeah, but the first...
So chickens are born from eggs, and just like how we talked about the chickens being different breeds, and so they're, sometimes different colors, they look a little different. The eggs that they lay can look different too. This white one is this is an egg that I bought from the store. And what I would love to show you guys, is the different, if we can, I would love to look and see if we can tell any differences between the eggs that were laid by these chickens and the egg that was purchased from the store, and talk about why that might be. These eggs haven't been washed yet, because they weren't from the store. They just came right out of the coop where the chickens were. And sometimes there's a little bit of poop around them. We're gonna have a look at what the eggs look like inside. And sometimes you can tell a really big difference in the store-bought eggs.
Oh, that has a white spot.
That's called the blastoderm. So this is the egg white, and this is the yolk. The biggest things is I feel like a lot of that can be prevented as long as they have a healthy, varied diet, and are not constantly walking around or living in their own coop, which is the nice thing about being able to shift a small cooper enclosure to fresh grass. So I've seen it both ways. Some people are like, well, it's fine if they want to go out, they'll take themselves out. So I leave the door open for my chickens. They almost never go outside if there's snow on the ground. So other people are like, no, I don't want mine out. The snow is bad for their feet. They're from Southeast Asia. They're not supposed to be cold. And but I find that usually their feet are fine. The thing that I worry about, and it's less of an issue in Massachusetts than in northern Vermont, that they can sometimes on their combs, they can get frostbite on the tips of their combs. They're okay. I know that sounds gross and scary, but they're in the winter, as long as they have a place where they can shelter, they're mostly fine.
If we have a foot of snow, they won't freeze.
No, and usually when there's snow around or whatever they just won't go outside, or the snow helps to insulate too. I will more worry about when I'm really, really, really frigid and windy. But as long as, like I said, like as long as they have shelter and as long as there's a group of them so they can huddle together for warmth. I mean, we might be like, oh my gosh, it's so cold outside, it's 10 degrees. But really, in the coop, when they're all fluffed up together, it's 30 degrees in there and they're okay, you know?
What, like a laying hen, what's their lifespan at your farm?
Sure.
How long do they live in captivity?
They can live, I mean, I normally would say their lifespan is between like 8 and 12 years, but I've also heard people talk about, oh, my 15-year-old chicken, or Lyndon just told me that the longest recorded life of a chicken was what, 22 years? 22 years. But I would say for the most chickens, due to like on the farm, due to like predation or health or whatever, most chickens, like 8 years.
A decade.
They start laying eggs when they're like around 5 months old, and they'll lay pretty consistently, like especially in the spring, summer, fall, for like 2 or 3, 4 seasons, and then that'll start to drop off. Yeah, these guys are, I think, are pretty young.
So when you're saying at 3 or 4 that would be called for, would that just be for going somewhere else, or would that be like for consumption?
Most of the time, at that age, they would be culled and used as like a stew bird, like a soup bird. It's rare that laying hens, especially like the laying hens that we use in like factory farm or like larger farm situations, have enough like meat on their bones to be considered like a yummy roast. They're very lightweight. I mean, some of them weigh like a pound, like literally. Chicken, and you know, people have strong opinions about the most ethical breeds or the tastiest breeds. Because you see, I mean, most commonly, like what we could go to the store and buy most cheaply, that meat is almost exclusively coming from Cornish cross chickens, which is like one breed that have been bred to be just like grow really, really, really quickly. And they grow so fast that they really don't have much of a lifespan after they reach a certain size. It would be like physically impossible for their bodies to continue to like operate, and like they suffer all sorts of organ failure after a certain age. And so other people prefer to raise slightly slower growing or slightly smaller meat chickens. Most of the chickens like in like a factory setting would probably be harvested around when they have a live weight of like 7 pounds, and so you're getting like 4 or 5 pounds of meat, or like the hanging weight. At the farm, like we raise meat chickens and we let them go quite a bit longer. So rather than like 8 weeks, we'll let them go to like 12 or 13 weeks, and they're a bit bigger. Like the chickens that you eat at the store, like in terms of age, like they're babies. They're all babies. And these chickens would have looked nothing, you know, if you compared them at the same age, 8 weeks old, they're gonna look nothing like the birds that you eat at the grocery store. And then, so there are also breeds that are, you know, like halfway in between. And we have some, like one of our laying hens, she's a big girl, Brunhilde is like 8 pounds maybe. And she's kind of like a dual purpose, we talk about like dual purpose breeds. So they could be used as meat, but they also lay eggs regularly. And back in the day, you know, when people like homesteaders or people who are really like subsistence farming, they're gonna rely more on those like dual purpose breeds so that they can have eggs, but then also like, oh, it's time for dinner. Sure, let's eat a chicken, and it's more than just like a 1 pound, 2 pound laying hen. Because those meat birds that we buy today, they never have a chance to lay eggs because of their age, but also even if they did, they really wouldn't. Their bodies are pretty much like they really don't like eggs. The eggs that when you buy white eggs at the grocery store, they're almost always laid by leghorns, and they lay eggs like most frequently. So like once every 26 to 27 hours, they're capable of laying an egg. Brown eggs that you buy at the grocery store, there are a couple different breeds. Sometimes it's Rhode Island Red, sometimes it's Comet, sometimes it's Cinnamon Queens. But like these are chickens who, they don't really have pretty feathers. They're not particularly attractive birds. They've really just been bred to lay eggs as quickly as possible.
Like when our chicks hatch, can we look at them and figure out what they might be, or?
Yeah, I feel like they change quite a bit. But you might, like, if you Google, like if you keep track of like what color egg they came out of, and you have a sense then once they're born, like you could probably make some pretty good educated guesses.
What's a chicken personality that's good for a pet? Is there that's be really friendly?
People almost always, like, I think the most common answer to that would be a buff Orpington, which like they're these big, like kind of orangey or like yellowy gold chickens. They have really fluffy butts.
Same.
Yeah, Orpingtons.
Orpingtons?
Orpingtons, yeah.
How many chickens is like the good number? Like it's not good to get like one? Just, like,
It's not good to get one. They're definitely pack animals. I would say even 2 is kind of too few. 3 or 4 feels good.
Okay.
Especially if you're looking for them to be like friendly and you can keep track of them and you know, okay, she lays the brown egg, she lays the blue egg. Oh, she has a limp. It just feels like enough that they can have a flock dynamic where they can, if they're 2 that don't like each other, they can get away from each other. It feels like enough of a like safety in numbers kind of a thing with 3 or 4, but then it's also few enough that you can kind of get to know their personalities and see them as individuals still.
Do they eat ticks, right?
They're omnivorous, so they will eat ticks, they'll eat bugs, we have a lot of earwigs around our house because it's so shaded, and they love earwigs, which I am so happy about.
Yeah, we eat a lot of those.
Yeah. If you're really looking for tick removal, guinea hens are like famous for that, but
Yeah.
Awesome.
I've seen
they're
guinea
also
hens before.
I'm not a huge fan. They make weird noises.
Yeah.
They're not as fun, in my opinion. Cruella and Snowball.
Oh.
So
Sounds like
Cruella is
Blue's.
of course the one who pecks the other one.
They must cuddle if you would like, Amanda.
They're quite friendly. She's really, really soft.
Rachel and Jack.
So there's like a hierarchy to
They have
chicken.
quite the hierarchy. Yeah, and it's fascinating. If you have a group of 3 or 4 chickens, you'll get to know their hierarchy. And that is how like bullies develop. Like she's at the top of the pecking order in these are my friend's chickens. She's at the top and she is closer to the bottom. And so you can see that dynamic, and sometimes it becomes problematic enough that you have to intervene, and somebody like the bully has to be temporarily removed and isolated, or maybe even in extreme cases rehomed because as a personality she's just not gelling with the crew. But for the most part, I mean, like that is natural. They do live in groups. They have a hierarchy. It's unavoidable to some extent, and for the most part, it's not causing like intense stress or physical harm to the chickens on the bottom. It's just like a dominant personality thing.
Taking care of them.
They'll guide them to like areas to bathe, like dust bathe, which is another important like health thing for chickens. Is they don't like to be wet, but they bathe in dust, and that's really important to like keeping their feathers healthy, their skin healthy, keeping parasites away from them. Oh, sure, yeah. Our like the rooster at the farm, you'll see the hens all like grazing and foraging happily, and he's usually like up looking around, just like keeping an ear out for danger. And if he makes a noise, they all will stop and look at him. Like I mean, he's a really good rooster. He's a jerk. Like he's a jerk to humans. I don't really like him, but he's doing his job. Yeah, I would argue yes, and lots of kind of like diversified small livestock farms, I think, would agree. When you have these larger ruminants like cows or goats or sheep grazing an area, and they go through and break down, or like they're eating that grass, you can send chickens through after, and they will then break down and scatter any manure from those larger animals, and they'll eat bugs out of it, they'll spread it, so they kind of help with fertilization. They make their own poop, which is really, really good for it. So anyway, you can absolutely use them to improve like your soil and pastures around the farm.
And
That's cool, I didn't
insect control.
Yeah.
And insect control.
Mosquitoes too, right?
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah, and mosquito larvae, they love like standing water. Yeah, they'll fish them right out. Yep.
What animals do you like raising besides chickens?
I don't love raising pigs, but it's fascinating to see, just because they're smelly, they're a lot of work, they make a mess of the landscape really easily, but it is fascinating to see how fast they work. They're just like they're powerhouses and they can clear areas just like goats or sheep. Really quickly they can churn up the soil. So if you're looking for that in an area, it's amazing to have access to pigs that can do that for you. It is pretty incredible how. I've heard that pigs are like the second most destructive species on the planet, like after humans, and I feel like that's totally possible. Yeah, lots of people are like feel like having a rooster is like important to the health and safety of the hens, which like can be true. I mean, I think it does like add something to their lives, but I mean, like the flock that I have at my house is just 4 hens, and they do okay. Sometimes if you have a flock of all hens, like what I think has kind of happened with Cruella here is that one hen will decide like she's in charge and kind of like take on that job of like being the stand-in rooster with more or less success. Yeah, but you can usually get, I mean, you can either buy adult female hens or you can buy chicks that are sexed. Which isn't a 100% guarantee. Like sometimes you can get female chicks and one will still end up being a male. It's just really hard to tell when they're young. Really tricky until they grow up and they have these like secondary sex characteristics that make it more obvious, like a big comb and big swoopy tail and a deep crowing. But you can get sexed hens, like chicks or pullets.